Hey, welcome to Game Central Junction, everyone. As always, I am your host, The Metal, and I'm writing solo today. Not that that was the plan or anything, but I haven't heard from Marsupial since, I don't know, late yesterday. I haven't tried getting in contact with him. He hasn't responded, so I don't know. Maybe he got too wrapped up in whatever he was doing, and he's not even checking his phone. Probably forgot what time it was. I'll send him another ping just in case, but I don't think it's going to make a difference. Anyway, that's fine. We can ride solo. It's not the end of the world. We're here to talk about everything going on in gaming, toys and collectibles, stuff like that. Mostly gaming, unless something else catches my eye. So, get as many of your friends in here. Grow the audience. We'll have a good time. And if at any point in time you like the show, you can always give a donation to streamlabs.com/vomittoylive. Really helps us out. But yeah, this is just what it's going to be today. Hope everybody's doing all right. Let's see. What's the first thing I wanted to talk about? So there are increasing layoffs in the gaming industry going on like right now. right now. It's something we've been talking about basically all year. And it's actually, we've been talking about it since 2 years ago, I think. It's been continuously going on. And one of the recent hits is a returner. Crystal Dynamics is cutting staff for the second time this year, which I know is crazy, but it might have something to do with all the games it canceled, and including the Perfect Dark reboot. I don't know why Crystal Dynamics was in charge, connected to Perfect Dark at all, but apparently they were when that was historically a Rare game. I was confused when Rare said they weren't doing it. Everything about that game was completely baffling to me. But earlier this year, in about March, they laid off 17 people, which doesn't seem that bad, but Crystal Dynamics isn't a huge studio. And now they've made, I think from what I could see, about an equivalent cut, and some of them were key team members. So I don't think that things are looking good for Crystal Dynamics. They're working on a Tomb Raider project, right now, for Amazon Games. But I wouldn't be surprised if this is one of those studios that we just see dissolve, basically, into being just a name, maybe resurrected later on. But God, that's so weird, because they're also supposed to be working on a Legacy of Kain. A new one, and I think remasters of Soul Reaver specifically. I don't remember if they were doing anything with Blood Omen. And they were supposed to be working on a Gex game. I can't remember if that was a remaster or a new game. But they should have so much going on. I don't know why you would cut your staff again. Especially with how small of a studio they are now. I mean, they've always been a pretty big company. But, studio size has always been kind of small. Because they were one of those ones that their size came from basically multiple studios being in the same company, which I think stopped mattering after Square purchased them and then sold them again. Because they were kind of combined with Eidos Interactive, the two different versions of them. And I think they were split again once they were sold off to Embracer Group. So it's just weird decisions all around. Weird decisions. And at the same time, we see employees are unionizing over in Microsoft, or at least they're voting to unionize. We don't know if that will actually come through. Because basically it's the Diablo devs, right? It says it's over at Microsoft. I'm sure there's plenty of other people at Microsoft, but we're hearing word directly from the people over at Blizzard working on Diablo that over like 450 of their devs are sick of all the constant pressure for layoffs, taxes, crunch, everything. And we don't mean taxes like in the monetary. We're talking about like your time. And that they feel like no amount of work is enough to protect them. And Microsoft seems to be like pretty obsessed with AI right now. And that might be why everybody feels like their job is in even more jeopardy than it used to be. Because you're like, well, you know, if the higher ups don't understand the quality of work in the product, what's to stop them from just replacing you with a computer? And you know me, I'm pretty almost staunchly against unionization, but it's not that I don't feel for them, because this situation just kind of sucks the more you read into it. Especially when Microsoft's already killed off over like 9,000 jobs in the last year. I don't think anybody who works for them should feel safe in any position whatsoever. It actually makes you wonder, what exactly is Microsoft doing? Not in just the whole, because I think this AI like plague is affecting every department at Microsoft, but specifically in games. What the hell is Microsoft even doing? Their console's not selling. They have very few titles of their own. The few that they have put out mostly aren't good, or they just don't get the attention they deserve. What was that one game? Sea of Thieves? From what I heard, took way too long to even start getting good, and instead of later on giving people the additions they wanted, they decided to start doing collaboration DLC instead. Everything that's come out of Bethesda recently has been awful. Everything coming out of Blizzard is awful. And those are, well, one's an older purchase, but one's a very recent purchase. Most people don't think Call of Duty even has its identity anymore. It's like, same with Halo. Like, we were talking about Microsoft proper game. A game that Microsoft's owned for a long time. Halo doesn't even really have an identity anymore. A lot of people are saying that Microsoft might be going the way of Sega, but at the pace that they're going, they might not just stop being a console developer, they might stop making games altogether. Not that they want to, I just don't see it working out with them at their current trajectory. They need to change so much of what they're doing in games to even stay on the software side, let alone the hardware. It's insane. Absolutely baffling. Like, can I even think of a good game that Microsoft has put out in the last decade? Since 2015. Hey, Fizz-Jozum. Let me think about that. Has Microsoft put out a good game since 2015? Yeah, technically, you know, because they own Bethesda, and id has put out good games, so I'll give them that. Id is like the only thing doing anything good for Microsoft at all. And I think they already owned them by then. When did they buy Bethesda? I think both of the last two Doom games came out during the time that Microsoft owned them. Let me find this. 2021. Yeah, so a couple of the games they've made have come out since that time. And that's it. That's all. I can't think of anything from like Microsoft Studios that have come out. Halo Studios, they've bombed everything related to Halo. The former 343. They bought Bethesda 4 years ago. Yeah, so at least like one of the Doom games came out since then. I forget when Eternal came out. I think Eternal came out already under Microsoft. That was... Oh, no. That was before the purchase. Okay, never mind. So only one of the Doom games. And people are even questioning the new one. I've heard mixed things about it. I haven't played it myself to be able to wage any opinion on it. It seems to have sold well enough. So I think that's all that really matters at the end. Cuphead was designed as a Microsoft exclusive. Isn't it still an indie game, though? Especially because like, you could get it other places. I think it was just a timed exclusive. I know they produced it for sure. Like that for absolutely produced it. Yeah, so I'll at least give them credit for throwing money at Cuphead. But I think for the most part, like the only thing keeping them afloat is the fact that they own Minecraft. And now I guess they own King too, so just anything that's under King's development is owned by them. You think they own Ori? I don't think they actually own Ori. A lot of the games that Microsoft published in their like indie development, they don't actually have ownership of, outside of maybe partial stake ownership, but they don't actually own most of these indie games they publish. Yeah, okay, just because something's was an exclusive, which they were only timed exclusives, doesn't mean somebody actually owns them. Let's see the full publisher information on that. It does say Microsoft is the publisher. So maybe they do. It's really hard to tell a lot of these times. Because sometimes publishing is just the initial launch of the game, which is why they end up other places. Sometimes it is the publisher that pushes them other places. But just because they published the first game doesn't mean that they own, like, the IP or anything. So I'd have to look a lot deeper into both it for Cuphead and Ori. I do know that they definitely published them and they had timed exclusives on Microsoft for, what was it called? The Xbox Live Arcade, I think, is when they were first started doing a lot of this stuff, which was any of their digital platforms. Like, full games were on arcade too, but they had like a whole indie development phase with the Xbox Live Arcade. But I don't think either of those things are particularly doing well. Like, they're not really helping Microsoft out either, as well as they're doing. Like, these games do great, but they're not helping Microsoft. They're a drop in the bucket. Okay. Now, at least with Ori, I think it might be correct that Ori might fully be owned from them, just because I'm looking... Like I said, I wanted to look deeper into it before just saying that. The next game is not just being published by Microsoft, but it's also in co-development with Xbox Game Studios. So that does look a bit more like at least majority ownership of some sort. But I gotta double check these things, you know? Even, Fizz, you do give us a lot of good information in the chat often, but it would be foolish to just accept anything that somebody in the chat says without actually pulling it up, right? Unless it's like jogging my memory of something I once knew. It's like, yeah, that sounds right. Yeah, I just, where's my train of thought? My train of thought, yeah. I don't think things are going well for Microsoft in the software department as well as the hardware department. And it does seem like they are moving further and further away from hardware. And if almost everybody who works at any of the Xbox game studios or any of the studios that work underneath them are afraid that they could be fired at any time, the road looks dark for them. It looks very, very dark. See, Fischoso asks, why can't Sony make a PvP third-person shooter with all the IP they own? I mean, they can. It's not whether they can or can't, right? It's whether they will. And I've talked about this many times. Even if an idea sounds good to you, or sounds good to me, or it sounds good to, like, literally anybody else in their audience, that doesn't mean that there's anyone in the studio that has the drive to do it. And then you also have to be very careful about trying to give companies ideas as well, right? The vaguer your idea, the more that it looks like they could have come up with the idea on their own, the more likely attention to it might get them to do it. Like this idea, if somebody in Sony had the drive to do it, I don't think they'd be worried. But the more specific an idea becomes, the less likely a company wants to run with it because they don't want to deal with like lawsuits and everything of stealing somebody's idea. Nintendo used to have like just a strict policy about like blanketly rejecting any fan ideas that for games that were sent in. I even sent in a few when I was younger, and I didn't know this policy at the time. They always gave you what I think was mostly a pre-written statement that they just sent to everyone. But they were fill-in-the-blank spots where they could give you particular information about the thing that you were saying. So you know that somebody at least read over it. They just didn't have time to give you a fully original letter. The reason I know this is because like half the content of the letters that I received looked identical. But they did have specific information about the stuff I sent in. Just a little bit. To make it feel personal. But they would just like blanketly refuse anything anyone he sent in. I heard this from an insider later on. Not directly at me. I was listening to an interview. That it's like, yeah, because they just can't afford to get into some type of mess with somebody who wants to claim ownership to the idea. Even if like the fan would never do that. It's about a safety net. But on top of that, it's like somebody at the company actually has to have the desire to have this game made. And then they have to convince the people above them that there should be a desire for this game to be made. And then they have to convince the people at the top, the investors, that this game needs to be made. And that's why a lot of things that just seem like good ideas never happen. Because we're just like in a machine of multiple layers, and you have to sell your idea to like literally everybody on the layer above you. Unless you could get like the ear directly to the guy at the top, like you can skip layers, but because of scheduling and all that, that often doesn't happen for people. I mean, a perfect example, recent game over at Ubisoft was Clair Obscur Expedition 33. The guy who made Expedition 33 literally tried to sell the higher-ups at Ubisoft about the game. Like, nobody has a desire for that. So he just left and went to make the game himself. And so, for all we know, there could be somebody in a Sony studio that absolutely would love to make an Overwatch hero shooter clone with their properties. We saw them do that with a Smash Brothers clone. PlayStation All-Stars back in the, I think it was PlayStation 4 era. I think it was only like a decade ago, right? Because, you know, Smash Brothers is so popular. So why wouldn't they make their own? And it doesn't matter. Somebody in the company has to decide they want to do that, and then they have to try to sell the rest of the company. Well, not the rest of the company, just specific people up the ladder that the idea would be good too. Though, I don't know how well that would sell. I'm sure maybe there'd be a lot of people interested, but you bring it up like Joel. I'm guessing you mean from The Last of Us, Aloy, and all of that stuff. I wouldn't play that game. First off, I don't even like hero shooters, so I'm already not the audience for that anyway. But then these characters is like, no, I don't want to play that. The question is, yes, I'm not the audience, but is there an audience big enough, right? I don't think the people who play those like really narrative-driven games that are basically walking simulators in between the few bits of combat and stuff there are would be interested in a third-person like arena or a hero shooter, or even like a like Overwatch would be more of an objective shooter, right? Where there's some type of goal or objective to the match, aside from just like racking up kills. Not to say that you shouldn't put those characters in that type of game, but you're definitely going to have to sell it on other characters than them, right? They would just be in there because they're already part of the PlayStation properties. So you would just include everyone, but you're not particularly going to sell big fans of those games on it necessarily. Some of them, I'm sure there's probably overlap. I can think of people I know personally who there would be overlap. I just don't think those are like the definitive characters for selling that type of game. I'm trying to think of other PlayStation characters that might. Let's see, who's in the PlayStation All-Stars games? Because especially if you do it like PlayStation All-Stars, they don't have to all be Sony game characters, right? They could just be characters who are on Sony systems, like Metal Gear characters could be in there, who are also gun maniacs. That would probably be good for selling those games. And they were technically, the first Metal Gear was on NES, but most of the games that people like or remember were on PlayStation. So there's like this image that Metal Gear character should be in there. What's his face? From Dead Space, I think, was in it. Yeah, Ratchet and Clank. Ratchet and Clank would be a perfect one for selling that too, especially if you wanted to be like a very Mayhem style shooter. They'd be perfect. You could probably put Jak and Daxter in there as well. They have used guns before, right? There's a lot of people. That would be great. Other like Naughty Dog characters. Put in what's his face? That I'm spacing on from Uncharted, main character. Well, I am completely Nathan Drake, I think is his name. You could put him in there too, right? There's tons of characters they could put in for a game like that. They would just need somebody to actually have the willpower to want to make that game. But well, I'm going to say, not the willpower to want to make the game. The will to make the game, the willpower to try to sell the people above him on the game. That's the important part. Let's see. He also says, maybe that's why Josh Sawyer never responded to my questions about what he would do if he was in charge of Elder Scrolls. I don't know if that's why. Personally, I think this is separate from the blank. We just don't take fan ideas because of the trouble. Personally, I would also probably just blankly neglect most questions that came at me if I was in that type of position, because I'd probably be getting way too many. And I'm sure, a lot of people, they think they mean well with their questions, right? They think they're not being annoying. But when you get like hundreds of pings or questions from people, it doesn't matter how well-meaning it is. That just comes off as annoying. That's like one of my favorite people who deals with this, and everybody gets mad. They get blocked from him. for like the dumbest reasons is Hideki Kamiya. It's kind of almost become a meme. And you're like, oh man, he's such a jerk. You know, actually, he's not that much of a jerk. In fact, when you're nice to him, when you do actually speak to him in his like primary language that he grew up speaking, Japanese, he can be kind of nice to people. But you have to imagine just like the thousands upon thousands of messages Kamiya gets a day. It's like, of course he's just going to be a jerk and like blam people. You think Sawyer hardly gets questions on Elder Scrolls? I don't know. I think it matters if it's particularly Elder Scrolls. I'm sure the dude just gets tons of questions in general. Like, you have to look at it from his perspective. You're just some random guy coming up to him asking him about something. Like, did you ask him, did he open up like an AMA or something? Is that when you asked him? Or did you just like shoot him a question out of nowhere? Which even then, if it's like an AMA, if you're getting enough questions, like you're not gonna answer every single one. But that seems like more of the environment to be randomly asking somebody a question because they're opening up to random questions and you're hoping you win the lottery and just get picked. But I don't know, if you just like kind of go up to somebody on like a random Tuesday and be like, hey, I want your opinion on what you would do if you had this thing, it comes off pretty strong. It's like, this ain't a panel. Well, I mean, this technically could be, if we're talking about the fact that I'm on stream right now, but life, go on Twitter, is not a panel. Answers questions about Fallout all the time? Okay. But do you know how many times he also doesn't answer questions about Fallout? I guarantee you he does not answer 100% of the questions he gets about Fallout. I guarantee you he doesn't answer 100% of the questions that get sent to him. Nobody does. Unless they have like 3 followers and they're excited for anyone to ask them anything. Like, I'm in that position, right? If somebody asked me a question about X Dynamis Chaos, I would answer literally anything they asked me because nobody asks me anything. But I'm not somebody who worked on a successful video game. So we're completely different environments there. I could imagine if I had tens of thousands of people potentially asking me things where I'm getting hundreds to thousands of questions in any given month. Oh, yeah, I'd be ignoring half of them. Especially, I can already imagine just how stupid most of them would be, too. I did work on a game once. Not a massively successful one. It wasn't even a big game. It was just a dating sim. But it was fun. It's not something anybody would ever ask you questions about. But one of the cool experiences, like every so often I do like to go onto YouTube and see if anybody's done like a playthrough of it and record it. And I found a few. So I've had a few like interactions where like I've engaged with somebody who played it. But when you're small, that's how you get it. It's like you have to go in and engage with other people. You're not going to expect them to engage with you. It's the exact opposite when you're dealing with somebody who's worked on popular things. What was the other thing I wanted to get to? Well, I mean, I've got plenty of time. There's plenty of things I want to get to. But I do have some things pulled up. Oh, here's an interesting thing. So we were talking about earlier this year when the Nintendo Switch key card was announced, which are these like basically empty flash memory cards or whatever, mostly empty, that just have the license for the game on them, and then they cause your system to download it. So you're basically still getting a digital download of the game. Your card barely functions for anything other than having a physical license, like a key to starting your car. All the software that your car needs is in the computer chip in the car, and yes, if you have a modern car, it does have software in it. But it's more like a machine BIOS than anything. But still, you get the point. Everything that you need for the car, the firmware, is in the car. You just need a key to start it. That's basically what the Nintendo game key cards are. Well, CD Projekt Red, despite having a really, really large game in Cyberpunk 2077, decided they were ditching the game key card. They were actually going to put it fully on a physical card. I don't know why you wouldn't. Those cards can hold a large amount of information on them. And they felt that that decision paid off. It was the right thing to do because already on the Switch 2, 75% of their sales were the physical edition, meaning that more people wanted to physically own the game, all on the cartridge, than the convenience of just having it digitally on your system. Which, I guess, also the game key card is the worst of both of those cases, because there's the convenience of having it on your system, but the inconvenience of still having to put the card into your system for it to play. It was like the worst of both worlds. But I think this kind of came out in an interview where they were absolutely saying that they thought they made the right decision here. Which is even higher than most third-party games, because for the average for almost all third-party games on the Switch is still about the same for the Switch 2 right now, was 65% physical. So this is another 10% higher than the average for Switch sales, being physical copies. And I think they're just sending this out as a message. Don't get baited by the key card. Stick to physical copies. Especially when, like, I'm assuming the Switch 2 has this, because it's native to the original Switch, and I don't know why they would take it out. It's just part of the way the operating system works and part of the wireless capabilities of the system. The reason physical media is so good with the Switch compared to other systems is because unlike other games or like other systems, PlayStation, Xbox, where you put a disc in and maybe it still has to download the game, which is the game key cards kind of work like that, or, you know, there's like a day one patch. So there's not really a flawless root physical copy of the game. You can't play it without updating. The Switch has the capability where even if the eShop went down in the future, you could just bring your Switch to somebody else who has all the updates, and you can get your patches from them, which is kind of like a form of preservation of game media. The game key card, I don't know if it would work that way. Like, I know we've pondered this. I haven't seen anybody actually answer this question. I've searched for it. Maybe in the coming months somebody will, and or maybe I'll just have to get my hands on 2 different Switch 2s and a game key card to figure it out. But the game key card seems absolutely pointless if I can't slowly manually download the full game from my friend's Switch without having to go online, right? That is more of the destruction of media than the preservation long term. Most of these games coming out nowadays aren't going to be playable in 30 years, Fischozo says. Yeah, probably. I don't know. I don't know if that's the raw math. A lot of the games that people are interested for sure aren't. Right? And anything that needs a live service probably won't be playable in 30 years unless current initiatives about like stop killing games and stuff are actually successful. We've seen some push already on that. Obviously, that won't have retroactive power far enough back. Maybe only like anything that's currently running now. So if it's already a dead game, oh well, it's dead. But yeah, a lot of these live service games won't be playable. But at least if there is an offline mode for a game, or if it's like a single player game that's mostly offline, on the Switch, you can get your updates if you're like a new player to the game. Like, I never played it during its heyday. I have access to the game, but I need to update it to play it. That's fine. You could just go find somebody else with a Switch, which also means that there'll be easy ways to get your updates via an SD card. You won't have to do a lot of jailbreaking, which is the important part. Because technically, 30 years in the future, you could just like jailbreak any of these devices, right? Who cares about playing a legal copy? Pirate it, fix it, hoorah, right? Mod your console. But when we're talking about the preservation of media, a lot of people want the ability to actually play the legal version of the game on its original system. And you can do that for like every system up until about the PlayStation 4, right? Obviously, I think it technically starts in the PlayStation 3, but the vast majority of PlayStation 3 games are still playable without having to download an update. But that's the era where day one updates started happening. And PlayStation 4 is like when it took over. So I think like for the most part, you could take any random game up until the PlayStation 4 era and still probably just be able to buy it and play it on the original system. The Switch is like the only modern console where you can technically do that without having to get weird about it, even for games that need day one updates, patches, and stuff later on. And that's what the main reason why most of us are hating on game keycards, is because the Switch was so good in that regard, and they decided, which this is not necessarily on Nintendo. I don't think they're using the game keycards for any of their games, but they decided to give people an opportunity to say, fuck it. Game preservation, who gives a shit about that, right? See, this is live service games cost so much money to maintain. It's literally cheaper to make an old-fashioned game than a live service game. That is true. That is absolutely true altogether. It was always one of the big banes of MMOs. Anybody who worked on an MMO always called it a dying model, right? And that's even as MMOs were getting better and bigger and making more money. What they meant, though, is in the organic sense of like, if you buy a plant from a store, that plant is already dying if you don't do stuff to maintain it. And you have to water the fuck out of MMOs. A lot of these live service games, being functionally MMO lights in some ways, have all of those same problems. And saying servers aren't cheap, they're more expensive than they used to be. In some ways, cheaper in others. Like, it's not that expensive to maintain like a Microsoft Azure server or something like that. But people used to off-put that onto GameSpy back in the day. And GameSpy was a really cheap way of hosting your games. Not an option anymore. So also why like no Wii game or DS game is playable online, because they all relied on GameSpy servers. The original Borderlands relied on GameSpy servers. And they just go crazy with these live service games. The reason why, even though it is cheaper to make a, what you call an offline, a feature complete game, and any type of old-fashioned video game, that they still keep making live service games instead, is because the return on investment can be much, much higher with live service games, especially playing on FOMO and people's inability to control their inhibitions, right? There are so many people that will make, what's the term? Man, I'm blanking on it. I normally have this term off the top of my head, but when you're in the grocery store and you make like a sporadic purchase, right? There's plenty of people that will make those kind of like fleeting, whimsical, on-the-spot purchases just playing a game. Especially if they get emotional, like if they get riled up. That's the big thing that you have to remember, is that people don't think rationally. Impulse buy, thank you. Impulse purchases. People don't think rationally when they're emotional, and video games are the perfect place to make sure that your customer gets emotional, especially anything with PvP. And if you think that maybe the reason your opponent has the edge on you is because they purchased something, that's going to make you even more likely to make that impulse buy. Now, in a lot of games, your opponent's purchases don't matter at all. They want to make you think it does. But most of them, they don't actually affect the balance of the game. Getting the battle pass usually doesn't make you better at the game either. Most of these games are not pay to win. But they'd like you to think it is. They love when people believe that these games are pay to win. That like this skin makes it easier for you to win in the game. Or even if it doesn't, right? I think Fortnite's the perfect example there. Even if you don't think purchasing has anything to do with it, somebody who just lost the last 10 rounds of Fortnite is still in that emotional state that they're far more likely to make an impulse buy. If they have to pass by the store or anything on their way out, they'll be more likely to purchase a skin or a new emote or something than somebody who's just like calm, cool, and collective. That's how they get you. That's why they love these live service games. That's why like Fortnite makes so much money. League does it too. All of these big games. And a lot of people aren't affected by it. I don't think any game state has ever made me purchase something. Most of the time when I want to purchase something, it's because I want to support the game that I play, but like you don't need it to affect everyone. You only need it to affect like 35% of people and your game is booming. That like little over a third, that's all they care about. Yeah, the other, meh. You get those. Most people could play the game for free as long as there's a bunch of impulse buyers that are willing to dump a ton of money on it. That's just how it is, you know. That's why voting with your dollar ultimately doesn't matter if you want to dissuade these big games. But it does matter if you want to promote smaller games, right? It's like one thing you have to consider is like voting with your dollar doesn't matter if like 100 times as much money will be spent on idiots or spent by idiots. But you can still support smaller things that you like, and that goes a long way. But I completely agree with CD Projekt Red, which was the original topic, that they made the right decision sticking with the full physical game card. Good on them. I hope more people make that same decision in the future. Speaking of the Switch, it seems that the Nintendo Switch 2 is massively outpacing the Switch 1 in US sales comparing to the same time frame from their launch, which they launched, I want to say roughly around the same time. I think in the year, the Switch 2 came out a month after the Switch 1 did. So I think the Switch 2 was like a June. It was a June release, and the Switch 1 was like an April release. It was like right around Easter time, which is a great time to launch your console. Is Easter. I think that it's overall a better time because you have family members that might buy you a console for Easter. That's happened for me and my family a few times. We were pretty poor ourselves, but like my grandmother, she always did pretty well. And they decided she would get us the new console for Easter sometimes. It's like a group gift for the whole family. It's like, yeah, gifting for Easter isn't too common, but it's not uncommon either. But you don't treat it like Christmas, right? You don't get everybody individual gifts, but it's like, if I can hit the whole family with one thing, that's a good gift. Despite coming out a month later, it seems it doesn't matter because everybody is so hyped for the Switch 2 that throughout this entire period, they have now exceeded the 2 million unit sold mark that they were aiming for. That puts it at 75% ahead of the original Switch. I didn't expect it to move that fast. I know a lot of people did. If Marsupial was here, he'd probably say that he expected to move fast. Actually, he might have even expected to move a little faster. I was really skeptical on how fast the Switch 2 would move. Mostly because I don't really see... Actually, maybe his opinion would have changed because we've had this conversation several times. There's not enough games to really move the console. Most of the games that you could get for the Switch 2, aside from like maybe 2 specifically, the new Mario Kart, which I'm hearing very mixed opinions on. A lot of people loved it on launch. My brother hates it. He thinks it's the worst Mario Kart he's played, I think, is one of the words that he told me. But a lot of people hate the balancing that they've been doing to it, the nerfs and changes. The game itself, outside of online play, doesn't have a terrible lot of continuing play value. It's not as good for parties as previous Mario Kart games. And then the other one is Donkey Kong Bonanza, right? So you've got 2 Switch 2 exclusives from Nintendo. Everything else coming out, though, you can get on the original Switch. So it doesn't seem to be a must-buy. I was expecting more of the increase to swing around at the end of the year, right? Closer to the holiday season. I was still expecting it to outsell the Switch 1 in the first year, but I wasn't expecting it to outpace it now. I was expecting a huge upswing from like layaway purchases and stuff going into like the Christmas season. And I was wrong about that because they're just doing good. They're doing way better than I could have imagined. Yeah, so they're planning on hitting 15 million sales by the end of March. Probably a lot of this is counting for the upswing in the holiday season. At first, I didn't think that was likely. At the rate it's going now, you know what, Nintendo? I think your marketing analysts are spot on. Of course, you could pay for really good ones. I shouldn't have doubted you. But, yeah, I believe it. I believe you could hit over 15 million come March. That's crazy. Let's see, Fishoso asks, did you know they tried to make a Vampire the Masquerade live service game a couple years back, but it failed? I heard they were doing something with Vampire the Masquerade like a few years back. I didn't remember it being live service. I just remember the game failing, so it was probably the same game. Most live service games fail. And the real question is, how do you determine if a live service game failed or not, right? Because eventually all of them will hit end of service. So isn't death a given? I think there are 2 main states on whether a live service game failed. State 1, it never actually makes it out of beta, right? Like to the full release main service. That's a clear failure, and I don't think anybody will argue against that. The second is if it dies within the first year. Most live service games do not make it to a year old. They go end of service before or by the end of the first year. And because of that, I would say that most live service games are failures. Now, a lot of people think that's weird because, like, yeah, but I play a lot of games, like even full console games that are technically live service. But if you paid for, say, like a Call of Duty game or these like massively popular things, they're not going to end the service in the first year, especially because like all the actual game sales help paid for the server. They don't have to rely on battle passes, at least for a few years. Like, this game will probably have a server running for the next 5 years. There are so many live service games that get put out there every single year that most people haven't even heard of them all. So it can be shocking when they think, man, what do you mean most live services die within the first year? So many of them are like Asian games that I can't even remember the names of because I don't speak the main language, and even the translated game just has no real coherency to make me want to remember it. A lot of them are like NetEase and like Netmarble stuff that come out of like Korea, some stuff out of Japan. A lot of them are phone games, but plenty of them are console and PC games too, and they just bottom up. They're gone. Some of them within 6 months. Now, there's a lot of laws that are coming out now too. I know Japan's already put stuff out that if your live service game doesn't make it like to a year, I think the year mark is the one that they put, which makes it even more fair to judge that as the failure point if the law also agrees that any money that was spent on the game, not necessarily to purchase things, but was at least, I know the stuff that was loaded in and not purchased has to be refunded. In some cases, even the purchase stuff, they have to issue refunds because you failed to meet your consumer agreement. And I think in a lot of cases in the terms of service, if you read through it, they are starting to make them put in a minimum like timeline of the game will be running for at least this amount of time. There's a lot of countries that, because of the consumers' complaints, are fed up with how a lot of these live service games are running. Which is why I don't actually see, in the long term, plights like Stop Killing Games failing. Like, they might fail now, but it'll keep coming back. The fact that there are many places that are already putting in certain laws about the consumer protections and rights on this stuff makes me think that eventually there will be enough protections on these things. Whether that means that you'll actually be able to have permanently playable versions, like an offline mode or a server client that somebody could run on a private server. I don't know if that will actually happen, but I don't think it's unreasonable just looking at the way laws are developing in other countries. It's just the way things are. What was one of the other ones that we had? Well, I'll probably just spin into rambling for the last half hour of the show at this point, as if I wasn't already. Some of these other stuff that I pulled up, I really only wanted to talk about if Marsupial was here, because I think he would have been good to bounce off of. And so we'll get into other things. There was something I wanted to rant about, a problem with video games right now that I noticed. So I've been finally forcing myself to play Final Fantasy 16. Which I'll tell you, I've been having a miserable time with it. There've been a few highlights of the game. Don't get me wrong. You know, even when you're playing a game like this, you can find moments of joy in it. But it hasn't been a very good Final Fantasy game. It's been a mediocre game overall. If it wasn't Final Fantasy, I probably wouldn't hate it as much. But there is one thing in it that has just been sorely pissing me off, and it's not just this game. It's been happening in a lot of games everywhere, in multiple types of games. And part of it is this obsession with making things more cinematic, but at what cost? at what cost? The thing I want to rant about for a little bit is something that I've been calling false game mechanics. And I was calling them fake game mechanics, but I think false is a better word for it because they are mechanics, technically. They're programmed to the game. They do things with your response to it, right? There is an input involved that makes something happen within the programmed game. But they're pointless. Two in particular here, which I've seen in a lot of different games, and I kind of just have almost like a physical cringe every single time they come up, and they come up pretty often. One of them is as I'm running through the world, there'll be obstacles that Clive needs to push open, whether it's just a heavy door to a place or a gate he needs to lift or something or break a wall, and he'll stop there and they'll have you hold down the trigger button until it fills up the whole circle, and then he'll do it. There's no point in having you interact with this. It's just there to make it feel like you're playing the game, even though you're not doing anything at all. There's no fail state, really. Like, I guess if you release the trigger, he stops doing it, but you don't get punished for stop doing it. You just do it again. It's asinine, to say the least. I hate it. I've probably done it over 100 times in the 15 to 20 hours that I've played this game already. It's like QTE, right? Yes, a lot of Sony games do that. As I said, like, this is a problem in games in general right now. It's like QuickTime events. And I don't think all QuickTime events are bad. I think they have their place when they're done well, when they fit the pacing of the game. Most QuickTime events are not done well. And a lot of times, they're just there to make the player feel like they're engaged. You know, to make sure you're not falling asleep during a cutscene or anything like that. They're just there to make it feel like you're doing something when you're not doing anything at all, especially when most of these events don't even have a fail state. If you can't die from missing this, what's the point? And if they give you 30 seconds to hit the QTE, it's not really quick. It's more like a slow time event, which happens in the fights in Final Fantasy 16 all the time. They'll call them like cinematic dodges, cinematic strikes, cinematic finishes, and like the QTE will just pop up, and there'll be a timer, and you've got like 30 seconds to hit it. There's really no point in it even being there. It stalls the game. They just want it to feel like you're inside of like an anime or something. To that point, overall, this is probably going to end up being my review. I don't want to finish my review of it before I finish the game. This is like preliminary thoughts of being like 15 to 20 hours in. My review is probably going to be, this would have been better if they just made it an anime. I think that's the case. Because if I were to put QT into these boss fights, I wouldn't make it like this like slow time event. You know, this STE. These fast action-paced boss fights, I would have made it like Project Diva or Us. And for everything you miss, you actually take ticks of damage. Like, it punish you for missing it, which you do get punished if you miss this 30-second pop-up that I don't know how, like, anybody with a functioning brain and hand could miss. But, like, I would have made it actually fast-paced to match the pace of the battle before it pops up. Kind of like in Kingdom Hearts 2. The Kingdom Hearts has a reaction button where different enemies will have different reactions you could do to it. In a lot of cases, the reactions benefit you in combat, so it's like an extra thing you can do. But in some cases, you get totally punished for missing the reaction. Like the samurais will just like assassinate you if you miss the reaction on that. And it is of a QTE. But it's a QTE that matches the pacing of the game. I've never hated... I actually really like the reaction system in Kingdom Hearts 2. I think it pulls it off well. And in the final boss fight against Xemnas, there's a part where you have to hit X and triangle back and forth in rhythm, basically, to things that are popping up, because the X is for Sora's command, the triangle is for Riku's, and Xemnas is just like shooting laser beams at you from like 100 different places at once, and you have to deflect all of them. And you do take ticks of damage for every single one that you miss in the rhythm. I think that's good execution. There's not a lot of good execution of QTEs, but this is the worst. The absolute worst of making me hit X to interact with the object and then hold the trigger down for like 5 seconds for him to actually do it. A confirmation for him to just do it would have been all. Me holding the trigger does absolutely nothing for this whatsoever. The other thing I want to complain about, and I also agree with you, Fizz, I had no issue with the QTEs in Arkham City either. That's another example of where they were done well. I think QTEs work well in turn-based RPGs, too, for, like, bonuses, limit breaks and stuff like that, where the normal stuff is menuing. The limit break might even have, like, a minimum amount of damage it's going to do no matter what. But if you do the QTE well or whatever, you could do, like, massive amounts of damage. They kind of did that with the summons in Final Fantasy VIII. There's plenty of parts where QuickTime events are great. That's basically how Paper Mario and Mario and Luigi games work, is like everything in battle is basically a QuickTime event. Plenty of places for it. The other mechanic that really pisses me off that I call a false mechanic that's in this game, and it's been in Final Fantasy XIV, so it's not the first Final Fantasy game that does that. It's been in Genshin Impact, right? Like other games are doing it, is where you have to go up to somebody after doing a fetch quest or something for them, and you have to give them the thing that you fetched for them. And a menu pops up. But the only things that are highlighted in the menu are the exact thing you have to give to them. You don't have to remember what you were supposed to give to them. A lot of them, they have like an auto input button anyway. In this game, it's not even a full menu. It's a little box, and the only things that exist in the box are the things that you have to turn in. And you have to click yes, click confirm. What is even the point of this box, other than to make sure that I feel like I'm doing something in the game? I could have just said yes, confirm turn in quest, and nothing would have changed. There would have been no difference in this. Why does this box exist? It's like the illusion that you're doing something. These are things you put into games to make people who don't play or like video games feel like, yes, I am gaming. I hate it. I hate it, not with every fiber of my being. It's a very loose hate. But it's more than a dislike. It's enough to make me want to rant about it. Like, this is really, really bad game design. Yes, it could have just been a dialogue option, Fizz. It could have just been a dialogue option of confirmation, and then it could have just played out. And I know, realistically, Yoshi P didn't have a lot to do with the making of this game. He produced it. He oversaw it. He probably had some input, not as much as the director. But there were probably some things where he had to approve because as the producer, you're the one who decides where money gets to go, right? Like, it's your job to secure money from the investors and then get it to where it needs to go. So he had some input on it. I should want to blame the director more for this. But Yoshi P's name is stamped all over this game that I'm just going to blame him. What the fuck, Yoshi P? Why are these false mechanics in the game that don't matter to it? It's already bad enough that the action's not very good in this game, right? It's trying to be a Devil May Cry game, but it's not a very good Devil May Cry game. So it's not a good Devil May Cry game, and it's not a good Final Fantasy game. Even like the themes and the interactions are pretty shallow compared to Final Fantasy games. Again, I haven't finished it. It could pull all in the last act, at least as far as the story goes. So I'm saving my judgment on that. But to where I am right now, it took... I think it was like an hour and a half of gameplay before I got to anything of substance in the game at all. It took 10 hours-ish, somewhere between 10 to 15 hours. It might have been a full 15 hours. to get to the point where the game actually opens up to you, because you have to go through 2 different time skips before you unlock things like the hunt board and your chocobo, to where like actually running around in the map matters, to where grinding is even like a possible part of the game. It bothers me. The whole time I'm playing this game, it bothers me. I kind of wish Marsupial was here right now to chime in on this, because he barely played. I think he played maybe an hour or so of the game prior to this. It's his copy of the game. But the other night, too, after we were done eating dinner, because we usually watch something while we eat dinner, we split off, and I'm like, okay, I guess I'm going to go back to playing the game that's pissing me off. It's like, yes, you go back to playing that game you hate. I wouldn't say I hate the game. I do hate these aspects of it. But he's been hearing me just rant about this game nonstop for like the last week whenever I started it. And the reason I'm doing it is because I've played through genuinely every numbered Final Fantasy game before this. I've probably played through like 90% of Final Fantasy games in general. Maybe closer to 99. I don't know which ones I haven't played off the top of my head, but most of them are probably games I don't know exist. So I'm going to say 90. I'm gonna be safe. I'm going to say I've played 90% of Final Fantasy, played through 90% of Final Fantasy. So I'm kind of forcing myself to play through this one so that I can say I've played it. But this might go down as my least favorite numbered Final Fantasy game, the most disappointment I've had playing one. And I kind of knew that was going to be the case going into it. I didn't want to go in disappointed. I tried to set my expectations really, really low. I'm trying to look for things that I can be excited about, that I can enjoy. And I have found some few. Very, very few. I think they've done the Chocobos justice overall, but they're still a downplay from where they were in the previous game. It's actually really sad that this game has made me look at Final Fantasy 15 in a better light. Because I'm like, you're still not a good Final Fantasy game, 15. But man, was I too judgmental towards you. Because this game feels like it was written by people who read the Final Fantasy wiki, and that's about it. And be like, yes, we're including Final Fantasy monsters. This story feels like it could be Final Fantasy, but then like when you're actually experiencing it, it's like, this doesn't feel like a Final Fantasy story. It's got the set dressing of it, but it doesn't feel like a Final Fantasy story. That wasn't my original rant, though. I really only wanted to rant about false mechanics, because stuff like this pisses me off. If your mechanic doesn't actually do anything for the game, don't put it in there. Like the problem with the interaction mechanic, right? If it was there and the reason you had to hold it down is because somebody could attack you and stop you from completing the action, that would be one thing. But when you're in combat, you can't even interact with this stuff. There's like an X over the dialogue box that shows you can interact with things. It's not even an option. It's like, where did you pull this from? Like, There are so many things I could like, oh yeah, no, I could see good uses for this if it was interruptible. If you had to mash it, like holding it down, stupid. Like if I had to mash it the whole time and something could come and attack me and stop me from actually being able to do it, at least there'd be a failure state, especially because I'd also take damage from getting hit. So there'd be a punishment for me doing it. But no, it's like, can't interact while in combat or in dialogue with somebody, even if it's like loose dialogue, like somebody's finishing up talking, you're already walking away. You have to wait for all of that to finish before you can interact with it. And then there's no punishment for doing the thing whatsoever. Yeah. See, I kind of want to wean off that topic. I'll get more into it when I finish the game. I do want to give like a proper review where I might spend like a whole 30 minutes of the show reviewing that game. Or actually, maybe I'll just record the review offline and upload it as a video instead. I don't know. Um, but man, I should clip this part of the show. I hate false mechanics. They're worse than just having you walk from, like, a walking simulator is better than having to engage with most of these false mechanics. But so Fizz says, speaking of Capcom games, is anybody excited for Resident Evil 9? I haven't seen enough to be excited about it or not. I've seen some things. Not enough to be excited about it. The thing that made me already a little more excited than the past ones, I think I mentioned this when the first announcement for it happened, is that you'll have both camera modes unlocked from the beginning of the game. Doesn't have to be added in from DLC or anything. And you can switch back and forth between first and third person whenever you want. I love first-person shooters, but to me, Resident Evil should be a third-person game. Doesn't have to have tank controls. Although it's had tank controls, I think even all the way through 6, right? I remember playing 5. I had tank controls in it. I think 6 pretty much operated exactly the same way as 5. I don't need those, but I do want it to be a third-person shooter. That's how it's always been. That's how I like it. I didn't even play 8, though I might go back and play it now that it had third-person controls in it easily accessible. At some point, though I'm still just not particularly excited about it. I think I'd rather watch somebody like Vash play it, which I was at one point, or somebody else like Saba. I think Saba's been playing it. I've been watching her play it here and there too. I remember Vash hated it, which if anybody watching this don't know who Vash is, I don't know how. I guess he's not super big. But he's one of the older people who have been doing Let's Plays. I've been watching him for a decade and a half now, I think. And I always go to him when it comes to Resident Evil. The first thing I ever saw of his was his playthrough of Resident Evil 4. If there's a Resident Evil game comes out, I go and watch his playthrough of it. A lot of times, preferably after I've played the game, because I don't want to spoil the ending for myself before I play it. But I'll go back and watch his. And it's kind of sad when he disliked a Resident Evil game. He gets excited for all of them. Similarly, though, to me, he was more excited knowing that third-person controls were going to be available from the start of the game. So, yeah, I'm a bit more excited than I was before, but not fully. I can't make up my mind yet. I'm going to have to see a lot more. It can't be as bad as 8. Like, well, I guess it can. I say that. Anytime you say that, you're like setting yourself up for disappointment, because I've seen the modern gaming industry. I've seen Capcom. But you'd have to try to make it as bad or worse than 8. Was 8 bad? I thought 8 was bad, even just watching it. And it was too disjointed. Like, the different sections. It made it feel like you were going on an adventure, I guess, between the different spots in the village. It wasn't just a single mansion. You were supposed to be going through the whole village. But it didn't feel very cohesive. A lot of the sections were just bad, though. Like, in general. Like, everybody was excited for, like, Lady D. But her actual section of the game was awful. Right, especially with like her little, I don't even know what they were, vampire succubus women, her daughters chasing you. It was just mechanically bad. The fights weren't very good. A lot of the newer Resident Evils, I kind of like 7, because 7 felt like the original one again a little bit. But a lot of the newer Resident Evil games, the newer Biohazards, are almost reliant on intentionally nerfing you at points to make the gameplay matter, which was not something that happened with the original Resident Evil game. It doesn't happen for the original 3 Resident Evil games, really. Yeah, you wish you could take on bosses in any order like Mega Man? That would have been cool. Like, if you just open up the entire village at first and maybe have, like, their individual places still set up like a mini mansion where you have to run back and forth and do that stuff, because the running back and forth to me is a key part of what makes Resident Evil fun. I enjoyed 5 for what it was, but I always look at Resident Evil like 4, 5, and 6 worse than I look at 1, 2, and 3 because they're more linear. 4 less so than the 2 that came after, but they're still more like mission-oriented linear games. If you're gonna do like this village theme, just open up, have your like mini mansions where it's like this room's got the key to this thing, that's got the puzzle, this thing, but let you tackle them in whatever order you want. And maybe you'll find like an interesting weapon in each of them that might make a different boss easier, but not necessary. Like maybe you find a flamethrower in one of them. That would have been cool, right? Or maybe find like a miner helmet in one that could help you against the miner helmet. Sorry, it wasn't sunlight. It was the cold, I think. It was the outside. It wasn't sunlight. I played it in English, so I don't know if it was bad translation. I really could not tell if it was the cold that was harming them or if it was the sunlight, because Lady D was the only one that could go outside of them. But if it was the cold, like the wind from outside, I'd give a tool that maybe like it was like a snowblower, you know? Give something that can at least phase them so you could switch to weapon and do damage. But make it like an optional thing. It was the cold? Okay. Like I thought it was sort of, but I really couldn't tell. But give like an optional tool that can make the fight easier, but you have to go out of your, like you have to do a different one first to do it, right? That would have been a much better game. As it stands, I do not like the way Village was made. And it's probably the Resident Evil game of the numbered series that I look down the most on. But yeah. I want to be excited. I like Resident Evil as a series. You know, I don't want the next one to be bad. It's like going into Final Fantasy 16, like, I don't want to have a bad experience. I love the series. I want it to be good. It's just what's happening. How do I feel about 7? I have mixed feelings about 7. I like the fact that it kind of brought things back to the classic mansion setup. I think some of the villains are nice. Like Jack, the old man, is cool. At no point in either of the games have I been sold on, what's his name? Ethan? I haven't been sold on him as a character at all. Mechanically, I like the puzzles. The puzzles feel like classic. But, I could say that about some of the puzzles in 8. I think the reason I don't like 8 is because 8 took all the things I didn't like about 7 and then exaggerated. Like, it made it worse, right? And then it didn't have most of the redeeming things I liked about 7. Because 7 did that same thing where you feel like you're making progress, and then out of nowhere, the game has to nerf you for the puzzles they want to do in this area. And it's like, that's not cool, dude. You know? Like, why couldn't you just make better puzzles? The boss fights were pretty good, though. I'll give them that. For modern Resident Evil games, the boss fights in 7 were pretty good. But I think this has actually been a big problem with the remakes, too. I think the modern devs have gotten hung up with the whole, like, nemesis or tyrant situation. Because, like, the tyrant in 2 was, like, only like the B path, right? It was the difficulty 2, the Leon path B, where the tyrant would chase you around the whole time, which then in the remake, they brought it into every version of the game. And then you have like 3 where Nemesis is chasing stars around. And they've become so hooked up on that they kind of forgot that wasn't the main point of Resident Evil. I don't need some monster chasing me around in whatever mansion or police station or whatever the hell I'm in at every point in the game. I don't need a tyrant, a Mr. X, following me around all the time. It's cool sometimes when it happens, when it's impactful, but the first game didn't have that. The fourth and fifth game didn't have that either. There were a couple parts where somebody was chasing you in 5, but that was just part of the stage. Mr. X in the remake was better than Nemesis in the remake. That is true. I completely agree with that. But also, part of that was because the Resident Evil 2 remake is better than the Resident Evil 3 remake. I like 3 more than 2, like in the original games. But the 3 remake turned everything into hallways. They kind of got rid of how 3 was. They destroyed that game with the remake. And 2 at least still had that mansion back and forth aspect in the police station that the original version of the game had. You just had to deal with Mr. X everywhere. So I haven't liked the direction that Resident Evil's been going overall. I would love to be pleasantly surprised with enjoying Resident Evil 9, though. I would absolutely love that. I don't think it's gonna happen, but I'm not counting against it. I'm not even saying like I won't hold my breath. I think it totally could happen. I just need to see more of the game. The same with like Silent Hill, right? Because both of those, Resident Evil and Silent Hill on the PlayStation 1 were such strong games that they basically created an entire horror genre, right? And the Silent Hill 2 remake looks so bad. It looks so bad. The new Silent Hill though, I think it's like called F or whatever. I still need to see more of it. I'm not as wary about that game. But right now, it's sitting in the same place that Resident Evil 9 is sitting for me, where it's just like, they just haven't been doing good with their games. That I think like I'd rather just wait and see before I get excited about either of them. Yep. I think. What else did I have from games? Well, this is at the end, and Marsupial's not showing up. Which I hope he's all right. The fact that he's not responded to anything. I hope he didn't get into a car crash or something. I guess I could jump through a few of the things that I have that I really just would have preferred to talk to him with, just to close out the last few minutes. I'm not one to wear Crocs. In fact, this doesn't change my mind at all, but I still think this is cool as far as collectibles go. That I think pre-orders, these are pre-orders are available for something that will be out very, very soon. Or no, they're out. These are just orders. You could order them; they'll be shipped to you. Animal Crossing Crocs that have KK Slider on them, and the Nooklings, Isabelle, Tom Nook, bell bags, all kinds of iconography from Animal Crossing that you're used to. The nice standard mint green color that Animal Crossing's kind of been associated with since maybe New Leaf. It's been more New Horizons, like everything with New Horizons of that color. But I think New Leaf probably had it too. Mostly because it's like the color of like Isabelle's clothes. She's got like a leaf green and mint green outfit. But it's cool. Again, I'm not into Crocs. I'm not even somebody who like laughs at people who wear Crocs or anything. I think we're past that phase. Everybody was laughing at them nonstop. But the thing is, I'm more of a barefoot kind of guy in general. So I don't really need Crocs. I guess they make good slip-ons, but I'd rather just get like cotton sole shoes or leather sandals. But for people who like that kind of stuff and collectibles, they've got him in Animal Crossing now. Let's see. One of the other things. Normally, I don't like to bring up the opinions of Hideo Kojima because I think most of his opinions are overrated because people look for opinions of him on things that don't even matter to his field, right? Like, what does he think of this movie? No one cares. This time, though, I kind of agree with what he said, and it is something that is direct to his field. And in a recent interview, he was talking to people where he mentions that he doesn't actually play a lot of video games. He maybe plays one game a year. And that's because he spends most of his time out in the world doing things that would help his games. Which I've talked about this a lot as a creator in many fields. I write, I draw. He said I have been involved in a small-scale game before. And as a multifaceted creator, it is actually very, very important for you to go out into the world and take your experiences from the world and just other things in general into whatever you're creating. If you're not living life, you're not making good art. But especially in games, it can be helpful to see what other people are doing with games, to try to glean mechanics from people, try to figure out what you want in your game. But you can also, if you have a skilled enough team, invent whatever mechanics you want, right? You can come to them on your own. And one of the best ways to inspire what should happen in your game should be seeing what's going on in the world. New technologies. Maybe you want to integrate something into the game, like some new form of an AI model. Or maybe within the game, you want to build mechanics that actually give your character full features of having a phone instead of just it being like an empty object in their hand, right? Or maybe you spent your summer camping and you want to add stuff you did while camping to a game. You think like, oh yes, everything we did here would make great mechanics, from like pitching the tent or setting up a hammock to actually going out and getting your logs, making the fire. Anything you do in real life could be better inspiration for the art you're making than just recycling things that you've experienced from other people's art. And he is talking more about interacting with technology, but he is talking about the same thing. He even says that, like, generally he prefers movies, books, going to museums, meeting people, such and such. He doesn't want to copy other games. He wants to bring other experiences into games. Now, this is something I've always appreciated about Kojima. I do think a lot of what he has done in the past has been overhyped and overrated, but he is still a good game creator. He's directed many good games, many Metal Gear games. He's even been involved with Silent Hill. And if you really want to do something novel, you can't just recycle what other people are doing. So I think that's a really good note to end out, the last thing to talk about and cover. It is right here at the end of the show. Thank you all for watching. If you enjoy the show, whether you're watching now or in the future, though I guess it would be now for you, please share it out with other people, grow the audience, and if you happen to enjoy my solo ramblings for today, you can always give a donation to streamlabs.com/vomitoriumlive. Really helps us out if you write something. I'll read it next time we come on. And I'll see you guys, hopefully, with a co-host to bounce off of no later than Monday for Super Serial Showtime. You guys have a good weekend.